pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today is Tuesday, August 18, 2020, and the time is 6 o'clock. And this is the regular meeting of Greensburg Water Board. We call to order to comply with Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The city requests that participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table in the back of the room. Have a roll call.
Chuck.
Here.
Tony.
Here.
Frank.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Robin.
Here.
Minutes from July 21st meeting were distributed in your packet. Is there any corrections or objections to the minutes as distributed? If not, they'll be accepted. Old business, generator transfer switch. Rick?
If you recall, last month I brought to you an estimate of $4,500 to it's a circuit board and the transfer switch itself that automatically transfer back to normal power off generator power. I had a guy from Wilhelm come over and take a look at it, electrical guy. He showed me how to transfer it manually, so that's not an issue for the next 3 months. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on that. So we don't need to spend the money to get that fixed. So we can take care of that. That's all I have. I don't need to spend any money this month.
HNTB update there.
I will try to leave the mask on, so if you can't hear me, let me know. So, things are still moving along pretty well. Some of the things they've done in the last month as far as the site, installed the head wall for the big storm sewer, 48-inch. They started to install a lot of some of that piping as well. That's more on the west side of the plant than they've been before, by the north building and up along the old, the existing clear wells. So, electrician, I think, has got the last of his duct banks installed as well. So that's moving along. He's working pretty much all over the place. He's also working in the Area 8. He's also working a lot in Area 4. The new treatment plant. He's doing both rough ends and connections, like putting light fixtures into the ceilings, and most of the rough ends that are behind walls are already in place, but he's started pulling a little wire, but not a lot. He's also started working on making some of the tie-ins to the panels and the pipe gallery. He's also began setting, there's an electrical room in that building as well, and so he started to set a lot of those panels and transformers and that sort of thing in there. So he's pretty much all over the site. As far as Area 3, which is the clarifiers, they've set the bridge in clarifier 2. They've set some of the equipment assemblies as well. They're in the process of welding some of the dome in place. They've got most of that done, and they'll be putting in the troughs here shortly. This week, the equipment is supposed to be delivered for clarifier 1. I thought it was supposed to be today, but the rain may have slowed it down. They probably didn't take delivery today. So once they get that in there, they'll start working on clarifier 1 as well. They're also doing a lot of the inside work as far as putting the plumbing and the piping for the chemical feeds, both in the hypo and the aluminum sulfite rooms. The masons are back on site. They built a parapet over the filter area, and they're now putting the brick on the filter side as well. They've got the west, and they're working on the north side. They didn't do much today because of the rain, and they still got the south and east side to do. So They're probably got another 2 weeks of work, and then they'll probably pull off again until they come back and finish up a little masonry around Area 10 building. But that will be probably a year from now, just roughly, or a little, not quite a year, but at least 6 months. The painters are working in Area 8. They're also working in Area 4. The plumbers are working basically in Area 4 at this point in time. So, then I don't, major issues are we're working through a few things. It looks like we may have to put in a secondary retaining wall where the storm sewer enters the creek behind the north building there a little bit to protect that building a little bit. It looks like the grade's not going to quite work out like we thought, so we may have to build a little bit of a retaining wall there. We had one other thing extra. We added a couple ballards to protect the sludge vault. There's some valve actuators that are up on top, and given that that area is going to be mostly either paved or stone, that we thought there was a chance that somebody could back into it. So we added a couple protective ballards that weren't part of the original project, but those shouldn't be too much as far as the cost. I don't anticipate those being very much. So. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'll walk through our little slideshow again. And here we are. We're setting the storm sewer head wall by the north side, on the north building. And you can see to the left there are some little temporary sheeting they put in where to install that. That's a 48-inch sewer that they'll be connecting to. And here you can see they're laying out of that head wall and going south along the west side of the north building. Here's some more underground piping. This is the air piping that's connecting the blowers, which are Area 8, to the filters in Area 4. I believe, short of just the connections to the water distribution system, this may be one of the last underground process piping they got to do. It's fairly shallow because there's a lot of stuff below it. You know, like I said, the electricians were installing their duct banks this last month. Here you can see some of that. I don't know if you can see there kind of in the middle of the page. They ran into a lot of underground piping that some we know what it is and some we don't. We didn't have to, I don't think, there's only one old well line that we did not reconnect back. I'm sure it was abandoned. So. That area there, they ended up having to almost excavate with a back truck because there was so much piping there. And here's another shot of it encasing the duct bank with concrete, and then they put in, you can see the red front of that from a previous pour. They put a dye on top of the concrete while it's still wet, so that's kind of a universal signal that if you dig up and hit red concrete, you better stop because there's usually an electrical duct bank. Here's another shot of that across the, we're heading west toward the north building there. The new treatment plant is to the left of this picture, and then to the right is the clarifiers. Actually, this is kind of running down the old 5th Street. And there are the valve actuators, and you can see the 3 ballards that we, protective ballards we put in to protect them. And here they are setting the bridge for clarifier number 2. They had to bring in a larger crane to do that. That was pretty much about 6 hours to get that thing set in place. Here's part of the clarifier assembly, center column there. And then you can start to see the dome or baffles. One thing you can point out is all those get welded in place, and so to keep it balanced, they basically started at 12 o'clock, it's 12, 6, 3, 9, and then kept working their way around the face of the clock so that they kept it balanced as they do it. If you don't, I've had experience where somebody didn't do that. When they They got around to 11 o'clock and did not line up. And there you can see the final dome being put in place. Looks like they're still welding at this point. Here's some damp proofing going on the concrete block over by the filters. And then there you can see that this is the west side wall. The brickwork is done on the west. They still have to come in and install the stone coping on top and the stone cap there. And now we're on the roof above the filters. There is the curbing for one of the air handling units. And then you can also see around that the brickwork on the inside of the parapet wall is being installed at this point in time. They've since finished that, so the next thing on this roof will be the roofers will come in and start putting down the membranes and the insulation and working on getting that uptight. That'd be good because these kind of rains, we get a lot of that water still getting inside the building, so it'd be nice once we get that watertight. Here we're in the electrical room of area 4. You can see a lot of the panels. There's also a transformer there. They're just at this point just setting the panels. They haven't really ran a lot of the conduit to those yet. But basically, the main power comes into the electrical room in area 8, and then there's a sub feed that comes over to this room in area 4, and then everything is powered in area 4. Is fed out of this room as well. Here they are setting some of the light fixtures and ceiling of the locker rooms. And then here's some of the piping, transfer pumps down there, which basically transfer the chemical from the box storage to the day tank and then onto the metering pumps, but there's a transfer piping in place there. And here's some more of some of that chemical piping as well. And we're looking at some strainers and some backflow preventers there. And in the foreground there, the black is the metering, one of the metering pump stations. One of the other things I forgot to mention earlier, they also poured the concrete stairs to both doors in area 8. So for anybody that's been on the site a lot, that's a welcome relief now. We don't have to climb up a ladder to get to any of those buildings anymore. So I think that's the last of the main stairs. They still got to set the stairs that goes up to the clarifiers, but that still needs. But those aren't concrete; those are metal stairs. And now we're in the pump room of area 8, and you're looking at the 2 high service pumps there, or the 2 backwash pumps. The painters have been in there painting those. Actually, that's what you're doing right there. The backwash lines get painted gray, and then the finished water lines get painted blue. And there's the finished water lines being painted. You also see the electrical conduits in the background. Those are all getting painted as well. They're painting the same color as the walls. The idea is to have those blend in so you don't see those as much. And now we're on the outside of building 8, and they got the scuppers and downspouts and the drain lines installed the last month as well. And now we're in area 8 again. This is the VFDs that will feed the high service pumps, and the wiring is being landed in each of those VFDs as well. That's it. Any questions?
How many people will you have there when you start it up?
How many will we have there?
Yeah, I mean, like Wilhelm and people like that there, or piping people, or you think?
Yeah, basically we reviewed their schedule last month, and they're going to try to, simultaneously start up some different equipment. Each piece of equipment they're required to bring in a manufacturer's rep that understands the equipment better than anybody else. He has to sign off that it's been properly installed and ready for operation, and And then he will run through with Rick's guys as well as anybody on site, kind of how the piece of equipment operates and runs, and they'll do this, he'll actually conduct the startup. So a lot of times, I think most of that equipment has areas for them to be there at least 2 8-hour days to do the startup on the major equipment. They don't always need 8 hours, but they're required to have that much. And I think they also have to come back at least once if there's something that goes, you know, they may do some of the startup and then something doesn't work like they said, so they have to come back and do that again. So all the equipment will be done that way. Some of the equipment will have multiple startups, like on the clarifiers. They may not have everything ready for water, but they'll do a kind of a torque test to make sure there's nothing binding anything. They'll do that earlier on and then come back and do the final startup and make sure all the scum mechanisms stuff work and that sort of thing. So that can be a multiple stage. Filters probably will be multiple stages as well. They'll come in and test the valve operations, and then they'll also probably come in a different time and do the backwash process as well. So. And then there'll be a startup on the like the big PLCs and how the overall controls work for that. So, yeah, basically starting according to Wilhelm's schedule, if everything goes as planned. Some of that startup will start mid to late November and basically run through the end of the year. So, on all the major equipment, that's, you know, foreseeing any delays or anything like that. They're not going to, they're going to run in parallel, they're not going to run in series, so they're going to be multiple startups on different days and that sort of thing, so we'll have lots of people here doing that. So. One of our tasks as well is to provide Rick with the operations manual. It's basically, I'll call it a playbook for how the plant's supposed to be run and how each equipment works. It's roughly, we're anticipating about a 40-page document, you know, kind of giving them, you know, the parameters where some things should land and what they should operate with that. I had a meeting today about that with my team, and we're trying to have a draft of that report done before Thanksgiving, so when some of these startups go, Rick's guys will have a chance to at least look at that and have a draft copy of that and then kind of understand it. That should help them ask some good questions during startup as well, so that they'll at least have some familiarity with what it should be doing, and if they don't see that from the startup, then they can ask questions. So that's the goal. Other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, COVID-19 pass-through payment plan. Just addressing that.
I can if you guys have questions about it. Good evening, everybody. I don't know whether Donna included a letter. It looks like you've got it. So what we did is the governor earlier this year, due to the health emergency, put a moratorium on utility shutoffs. We abided by that, did everything we needed to do. That was lifted here in last week, August 14th. So we have started the process of notifying those individuals that have past due bills. We notified them early on that they would still be responsible for their bills and any late fees that they incurred by not making payments, but we could not shut them off. Donna and her team have been working with everybody to try to get them to pay as we go along, but we saw those individuals who haven't done it. So we sent the letter, we did one call out saying, you'll be receiving this letter. It came with the agreement that you would agree to pay the 6 month, you would have 6 months to pay it if you don't pay it right away. We provided them the opportunity to contact other local services that we required them to contact before we put them on a payment plan. So we did that, and that went out yesterday? Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, today. So they should get it tomorrow or Thursday. Any insight? I think most people have been pretty good, so.
Yeah, there's about 288 people on the past due list. That's about normal. I would say there's maybe been 10 to 15 people that's contacted us asking about a plan. So hopefully there will be a hold a lot of people.
So they're getting the letters and ones that are late are past due.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, like most of the time, we have a lot of people that are past due, that once they get the call, they go online, they pay it, but they still have to pay the fee because they're late, whatever. So we probably will only have probably less than 50.
I would say so.
It seems to be the general consensus that'll want to get on the plan. We opted, the state gave us the ability, because we're an unregulated utility through IURC, we have the ability to do whatever we want, but the state recommended either a 3, 6, 9, or 12-month repayment plan. Donna and I decided to go with the 6 months because we don't want to drag this on for a year. They knew all along that they would have to pay their bill, and now it's come due.
So you say that 288 is, about normal?
That's normal what we start with, and then we send out the one call now notice, it's just saying you have until tomorrow to pay it, and then we usually have about 26 to 35 actual shut-offs each month. And those are what we haven't been able to do, due to COVID, so hopefully there won't be that many. I did check to see of those 288 people, there are 184 of them are rentals. So that's the thing that we run into. There's sewer lien laws in the state of Indiana that state, the owner of the property has to pay for the sewer portion if they do move out. So, yeah, hopefully we won't have that many that actually want to claim. Like I said, there's been maybe 10 or 15 people that have contacted us, so, yeah.
So it's not terribly far out of the norm?
No, it's really not.
virus, or-
It's really not, so that's a good thing, yeah.
When did we start this?
March.
March.
I think the April bill was the first one we couldn't turn off.
Right.
We opted as a community to not turn people off in March, and then it became state required, I think, right after we did it. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you. Mayor, issues, you got anything else?
Yep, I think we're all good.
Does anybody have anything? Case?